Hello and welcome back to Chapter 11. We are picking up with the second section on page 250. We're going to be talking about breaches and breach notification today, and then we're going to get into research today. And then we're going to finish up with our check your understanding. Okay, so under breach and breach notification, it says this was one of the most significant changes presented by HITECH. So we're talking about the addition of breach notification requirement. Now, breach notification imposes obligations on entities when protected health information in their custody has been wrongfully used or disclosed. And if we drop down into that next paragraph, it gives us the HITECH definition of a breach. It says breach is an unauthorized acquisition, access, use, or disclosure of PHI which compromises the security or privacy of such information. But there are several exceptions, and you'll read those in the third paragraph there. So it does not include disclosures to unauthorized recipients if they would not reasonably be able to retain the disclosed information. And it does not include situations where a workforce member or an individual acting under the covered entity's or business associate's authority unintentionally acquires, accesses, or uses the PHI if it was in good faith. Okay, so be sure to read that section, and it gives you one more example there of one of the exceptions. Now, the biggest thing I think you need to understand is that these requirements only apply to unsecured PHI, okay? So we're getting into encryption here. Encryption makes information secure. You can't read it. It's indecipherable to unauthorized persons when it has been encrypted. So these requirements only apply to unsecured PHI. So remember, breach equals unsecured PHI information, okay? All right, let's move on through these slides because they kind of have them a little bit out of order here. Now, so they use the breach notification as a way to mitigate information. Mitigate means lessen or make it more minimal. And again, we have to notify the individuals affected, and you also have to notify the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, when do we have to do that? Well, if it is over 500 individuals, immediate notification is required. And not only do you have to notify like the individual whose information was breached, but you have to notify the media. And then again, the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. And it has to go out into their breach portal. Now, going back to this next slide, what do you actually have to let the affected individuals know? Well, first of all, they need to know what occurred. So, what was the date of the breach? When did you discover the breach? What kind of unsecured PHI was involved? Was it my name? Did you leak my social security number? Was it my date of birth? Did you give people my home address? What information was involved? Then you need to give them steps that they can take to protect themselves. Okay, just like if your credit card company was hacked and they got social security numbers and account numbers and things like that. You have to let them know what they can do to protect themselves now that their information is out there. Next, you have to let them know what the covered entity is going to do to investigate, mitigate, and prevent this from happening again in the future. And then the last, you've got to give them contact information so that they can call and ask questions and know that they can receive updates. Okay? All right, now let's continue on into research here. So, risk associated with human subject research include violations both of an individual and his or her PHI. And so this section, I'm not going to read a lot of this information, but it discusses human subject research from a historical perspective, and it talks about the Nuremberg Code, and it gets into how that ultimately led to the National Research Act of 1974, which we've talked about it in a previous chapter. And then it talks about how today research on human subjects is governed by the federal policy for the protection of human subjects. And this is called, remember, the Common Rule. We've heard that terminology before. Now, requirements of the Common Rule include first, compliance assurances by organizations conducting research, requirements for informed consent, and then lastly, special protections for our vulnerable populations. So again, those vulnerable populations were prisoners, pregnant women, children, mentally disabled persons, and then those that are economically or educationally disadvantaged. All right, now we're getting into our institutional review board here. So it says they must approve federally funded human subjects research, even if the patient has signed an informed consent. The HIPAA privacy rule provides additional protections where research places human subjects and their private information at risk. Per HIPAA, research must be approved by either an IRB or a privacy board. Now, a privacy board is a group formed by a covered entity to review research studies where authorization waivers are requested and to ensure that HIPAA privacy rights of research subjects are upheld. Now, the privacy rule expanded the common rules requirements by regulating both privately and federally funded research, thus equalizing information privacy protections in both types of research. Now, it says they provide situations, and this is talking about the privacy rule, when individual HIPAA authorization is required for the use and disclosure of information for research, as well as when it is not. Now, authorization is required when the research is of public interest and benefit, but there are exceptions. So you do not have to have an authorization if the IRB or privacy board has approved the study pursuant to waived authorization, so that means there's no authorization required, or altered authorization. That could be where one or more standard element is not present. Now, waiver is only permitted if the use or disclosure provides only a minimal risk to the patient's privacy. Now, the second one, the use or disclosure of PHI is solely preparatory to research, and the researcher will not remove PHI from the covered entity. And then further, the PHI is necessary for the proposed research. Third, the use or disclosure of PHI will only be for research on decedents. So these are dead people, and it's necessary for research. And then the last one, the covered entity and the researcher will enter into a data use agreement that provides the researcher will receive only a limited data set for research, public health, or healthcare operations. So those are where you do not have to have authorization. Now we get into in what form authorization may occur in that last paragraph there. So additionally, the privacy rule has authorization requirements relevant to research uses and disclosures. The standalone authorization includes the core elements of a valid authorization. Okay? A compound authorization, it combines consent with authorization. Okay, so it's consent for the study, and then it's also authorization for the use and disclosure of the information. Then you have what we call conditioned and unconditioned. So, the privacy rule has generally prohibited the conditioned authorization in which covered entities condition treatment, payment, and health plan enrollment or benefit eligibility on an authorization. So, basically that one's kind of out. But in your unconditioned, I'm getting mixed up here. So again, the compound does combine the consent and the use of information, and it is generally prohibited otherwise, as opposed to the unconditioned authorization. The privacy rule has prohibited conditioned authorization. So again, compound is the one, conditioned is the one that is prohibited. This is to discourage coercing individuals to sign authorizations to receive services. So what that's saying is in the conditioned one is you're not going to receive services unless you authorize us to be able to release your information or use your information and so on. So that's why it's called conditioned. Those are prohibited. Unconditioned are the ones that should be used. All right, and then we don't have bold terms for altered and waived. Those were up in the top section. So again, altered is missing one or more of the standard elements, and then waived means that there's no authorization. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, preemption starts our next section, so we're going to cut off there. You can look at table 11.1. It provides a detailed analysis of the responsibility of both your internal or institutional review board and the researcher under the privacy requirements. And then let's go over and look at our check your understanding for 11.2. So number 1, the breach notification requirement was implemented under HITECH. That is true. Talked about that being one of the most significant changes presented by HITECH was the breach notification requirement. Number 2, the threshold for required media notification in the event of a privacy breach is 300 affected individuals. That is false. The number to remember here is 500. So if you have 500 or more patients' information breached, you have to alert the media. Number 3, a waived authorization may be permitted by HIPAA in certain situations. That is true. All right, number 4, if encrypted PHI is disclosed without authorization, this is automatically a breach. False. Remember, breach is only concerning, what's the word? Breach is only concerning, if we go back in our slides, it's in this slide right here. Where is it at? Trying to find the slide where it talks about, there it is. Requirements apply only to unsecured PHI. So if it is encrypted, it is not unsecured, and therefore breach does not apply. So number 4 is false. Then number 5, a compound authorization combines consent to participate in the research study with authorization to use or disclose. That is true. If we go back to compound, we don't have our definition here, but a compound, it does show informed consent plus authorization. So again, happy reading, happy studying. I want to keep these relatively short for you. I know it's not the same as hearing the lecture in class, but be sure to read through this entire chapter. This is a lot of information that you will not only need to know for tests now, but you're going to need to know this information when you sit down and take that RHIT exam. A lot of this information, especially the breach notification, that's a big piece of your data analytics and use of your information, and then also your compliance. So again, happy reading and happy studying, and we'll pick up with the last section in our next